Look at this map from the 16th century. You'll notice something strange, a massive island called Frisland. It's not alone. Scattered across the Atlantic are other strange, unrecognizable names. Land, Icaria, Drogeo, places that don't exist but appeared on maps of the region for centuries. But Frisland was different. It wasn't just a trivial part of the map. It was detailed, with cities, harbors, and geographical features. Cartographers placed it confidently, showing it as a substantial landmass. So how does an island, apparently the size of Iceland, completely vanish? And more importantly, how did the idea of it enter the minds of some of the most renowned mapmakers and explorers for over a century? The story begins in Venice in 1558, and bear with me because it gets a bit bizarre. A nobleman named Niccolò Zeno published the volume The Discovery of the Islands of Frislanda, Islanda, Groenlanda, Estotilanda, and Icaria. This book contained letters allegedly written by his ancestors, Niccolò Zeno I and his brother Antonio, who claimed to have explored the North Atlantic in the 1390s, a century before Columbus. According to these letters, Niccolò Zeno I set sail from Venice in the late 14th century, bound for England and Flanders. A storm drove his ship off course, and he was shipwrecked on an island called Frislanda. He goes on to say that he was attacked by the natives of this land, before being rescued by their ruler, a man identified in his accounts with the strange name, Zichmini. Modern historians believe this was Henry Sinclair, the Earl of Orkney. Sinclair recognized Niccolo's value and appointed him as his naval commander to help him subjugate the Faroe Islands by sea, while Sinclair established rule over the territory. Finding the arrangement favorable, Niccolo wrote to his brother Antonio, inviting him to join on this northern adventure. Antonio accepted. Together, the brothers helped conquer the Shetlands, which they referred to as Islanda. After the conquest, Niccolo became restless and traveled to Greenland, still a mysterious frontier to most Europeans. In Greenland, he discovered a Franciscan monastery built near a volcano, complete with hot springs piped in for heating and cooking, before returning to Frislanda, where he died in 1396. After Niccolo's death, Antonio inherited his brother's position, and this is where things get really strange. Enter an old fisherman with an incredible story. This fisherman claimed 26 years earlier, his vessel was blown 1,000 miles across the Atlantic to an island called Estotiland. The inhabitants looked European. They possessed gold, had major cities, and their king even had Latin books. The fisherman later traveled to another land called Drogeo, where his companions fell victim to cannibals. He managed to survive by teaching them fishing techniques. After 13 years of captivity, he eventually made it back to Frislanda. Intrigued by this account, Sinclair organized an expedition westward, with Antonio commanding the fleet. Despite losing ships in a storm, they reached a land called Icaria, then sailed 10 more days to another unknown land. They found a harbor in a region with a mild and pleasant June climate. Inland exploration revealed a smoking mountain with springs and cave-dwelling inhabitants. Impressed by the land's potential, Sinclair decided to establish a colony. Most crew members returned home under Antonio's command, while Sinclair remained to explore the new territory. The narrative ends here, with a brief mention that Sinclair also explored both coasts of Greenland. Their account was published alongside this map, the now famous Zeno map, which showed Frisland and other lands they claimed to have visited. The story was sensational. Here was evidence that Venetians had explored the North Atlantic a century before Columbus. The Zeno Narrative gained acceptance among some European intellectuals and cartographers. Gerardus Mercator, perhaps the most influential mapmaker of the 16th century, included Frisland and other lands of the Zeno Narrative into his 1569 world map. From there, it spread to virtually every map of the North Atlantic for 100 years. There's just one problem with this story. It's likely almost entirely fake. Modern historians have identified numerous inconsistencies and implausibilities within the Zeno narrative. Court records show that Niccolò Zeno was actually standing trial for embezzlement in Venice in 1391. at the very same time he was supposedly exploring the North Atlantic. The Zeno letters describe places and people that simply don't match historical reality. Frisland is placed in waters that have been thoroughly navigated for centuries. It's just simply not there. So what was Nicolo Zeno II doing? Why create such an elaborate hoax? The most likely explanation lies in the context of 16th century Venice. When the Zeno Narrative was published in 1558, Venice was engaged in a bitter rivalry with Genoa, the home city of Christopher Columbus. The younger Zeno may have been attempting to secure Venice a share of the glory of New World discovery. Throughout the age of exploration, European powers competed fiercely for prestige and the right to claim new territories. The Zeno Narrative served Venetian interests by establishing an early presence in northern waters. But if Frisland was a hoax, why did it persist on maps for centuries? First, we need to understand the nature of cartography in the 16th and 17th centuries. Maps were more than just scientific documents. They were political statements and works of art. Mapmakers often copied previous maps, propagating errors from one generation to the next. Without systematic surveys, it was difficult to disprove the existence of a reported island. The Zeno Narrative cleverly incorporated elements of truth. Many of the place names and geographical features mentioned can be matched to real locations in the North Atlantic, albeit misplaced or misidentified. Finally, there were actual reports of islands found in the North Atlantic that seemed to confirm the existence of Frislanda or other islands. In 1578, a ship from Martin Frobisher's expedition reported sighting a large island in approximately the location where Frisland was supposed to be. This island, which they named Buss Island after their ship, was reported again in 1606 by an explorer named James Hall. These sightings gave credence to the idea that there might indeed be substantial lands in the North Atlantic that had yet to be properly charted. The story takes another odd twist in the 18th century. As navigation improved and more ships crossed the Atlantic, it became increasingly clear Frisland wasn't where it was supposed to be. However, rather than simply discarding the idea, some geographers proposed a new theory. Frisland had sunk. In 1745, a Dutch sailing chart marked the supposed location of Frisland as Sunken Land, and suggested that it might have been the same name as the mysterious Buss Island, which had also vanished from sight. Throughout the 18th century, the Sunken Land of Buss was noted as a navigational hazard, seeming to confirm that something lay beneath the waves. So could Frisland actually have existed and then sunk? It's an intriguing possibility, but modern geology tells us it's highly unlikely. So what was Frisland really? Modern scholars suggest that the Zeno Narrative combined several real elements into a fictional whole. The Frislanda described in the text was likely based on the Faroe Islands, and possibly conflated with Iceland. The Zeno map itself appears to be based on several existing 16th century maps, including the Carta Marina and the Kart van Iceland. In other words, rather than being a revolutionary discovery, it was likely a creative compilation of existing geographical knowledge. This explains why Frisland and other phantom islands of the Zeno map appear so convincingly to 16th century eyes. They were based on real places, just rearranged and reimagined.